Yes. Welcome on in, ESPN 1410 Wing AM. Shout out to our radio listeners in Dayton. We are off the bench. Chatterbox Sports here. Elliot Rearing. We have Jacob Tissett, Casey McAllister, Justin Kinner. But now we have a very special guest. A very special guest. He hosts the Sean Miller podcast and is remembered most for being a part of Off the Bench, which he then quit. Paul Frischner, welcome. How the heck are you, buddy?
It's great to be back, Elliot. It's great. Yeah. You can never truly quit. You always find your way back home.
That's right. That's what they say. You always find your way back home. And by the way, I've tried to reach out to Paul. I've tried to say hi to Paul. I go to a Xavier game where they score the most points in Cintas Center history, or they win the game by 7,000 points. I say, hey, Paul, let's go meet up. Let's go have some fun somewhere. And then Paul says, oh, where are you? I'm like, I tell him, Paul, I've told you 5 times. He's like, oh, well, maybe next time. So Paul just doesn't want to hang out with me, and that's okay. I don't blame him. He's a busy guy. This is a guy who hosts one of the most lucrative podcasts in the world. He also has a documentary which airs on Local 12. Is that right, or is it Fox 19?
Fox 19, but
Fox 19. Okay, well I got it. Well, it's just one of the two. It's also on YouTube. Yeah. Episode 3 is on YouTube as of yesterday afternoon. Yes. So go check out episode 3 of the Sean Miller podcast on YouTube. But it's good to see you, Paul. It's good to have you back home. It's good to have you home.
Oh, it's great to be here, Elliot. It's great to be here. Yeah. I'm just waiting for whatever you're going to throw at me that I'm not expecting it, because I know something's coming.
No, I have some very serious questions today. So
you don't.
Yeah, I do. I have some serious questions today. By the way, speaking of which, the blue blob, that mascot still sucks, right? You're on record for that?
Absolutely not. Did you see the new merch that they put out? I got a hoodie right away. I bought it right before they sold out.
The new blue blob hoodie is pretty nice. The new blue blob hoodie. And people forget the Blue Blob origin story starts with this game. It starts at the Crosstown Shootout. I believe it was a prize to the winner of UC Xavier. It was going to be a red blob for UC and a blue blob for Xavier. Is that not right?
I don't, you know what? I should know this story better than I do. I've heard so many different, because the original story that I heard was that little kids thought the Musketeer was too scary, so they wanted to make something that was more kid-friendly.
That makes sense.
And then I heard that story about the Crosstown Shootout, that the winner got the blob, and I don't know I honest to God, I don't know what the true story is.
I think my story is right.
I don't know.
I think my story is right. Before we get to the game, I want to talk a little bit about the squad this year. I would say it's a pretty drastically different roster compared to what we saw last season from Xavier. No Fremantle or Hunter last year. With them available now, how much better does Xavier get?
They're great compared to what we were seeing last year in the front court. I mean, Xavier just was a complete zero last year in the front court, and now they definitely aren't as good as they probably would like to be, especially when you lose somebody that was going to be your defensive stopper, your shot blocker, somebody that was going to be athletic and clog the middle. And Lucina Traore, he gets hurt, tears his ACL before the season starts. And because of that, now you're kind of, again, fighting an uphill battle, having to put Zach Fremantle in the middle of the paint instead of having him play the 4. But still, Zach, the biggest question mark going into this season was, can Zach Fremantle get back to where he is and where he was before he got hurt a season and a half ago? I mean, he hadn't played since January of 23. Yep. He missed all of last season, even the end of the 23 season when they made the Sweet 16. So because of that, you're wondering, okay, Jerome Hunter is essentially coming off what was essentially a heart attack and then an Achilles tear. And Zach Fremantle is coming off what he was having to deal with multiple foot surgeries. Can you get back to that point? And he has. I mean, he's been the best player on the team so far. He's been the reason that Xavier has been stable through some of these rough patches. He's been fantastic. I mean, he had 27 and 10 in 22 minutes the other night against maybe the worst basketball team I have ever seen assembled on a court.
I watched that game. There was a point, I was sitting next to a couple of buddies, and I looked at him and I said, this has to be, like, if there was ever a team, like, trying to tank, and I don't know what you would tank for in college athletics, but this looks like a team. I've saw so many layups. Xavier would steal the ball and literally walk into the hoop. It would just say, we're going to take the point and we're just going to run away. That's it.
It was crazy because, I mean, if you look at what you're incentivized to do now in college basketball, and it sucks that it is this way, but it's nothing against the coaches that schedule this way. It's nothing against the teams that have decided to do this, because right now they're incentivized to absolutely beat the living hell out of these terrible teams.
Yeah.
And Xavier hasn't done that this year, which is why their analytics and their metrics have suffered. They've dropped some spots because they haven't beaten those teams that they should by 1,000,000 points. Well, they finally do it by 61 against Morgan State. But, Elliot, I've never seen a team not try on defense more than Morgan State allowed layups and didn't close out defensively. I mean, nothing. They didn't do a thing.
I don't condone gambling, but the live line for Xavier's total points in the second half, I kept betting it. And it was like 101, 106, 108, 112. Surely they're not getting 115. Hit it, bet it, and it's a winner. Shout out to Xavier. It was one of the more fun games I've ever seen. But moving on. Quincy Oliveri, not on Xavier this year. He's kicking butt in the NBA, or at least in the G League. Is he on the Lakers' actual roster right now?
Well, he made his NBA debut the other night.
Okay.
Hit a three. He's kind of been up and down. It's a whole Bronny deal.
Yeah, it's a Bronny deal. Bronny's really good, though. I think he's ranked dead last in the G League. Good for him. It's almost like nobody could have seen that one coming, huh? He wasn't really good. He averaged 2.5 points at USC. Not working out. Ryan Conwell, it does appear to be taking up that slack, taking up that mantle that Quincy had last year. Has he been able to give you at least some sort of consistent scoring, be that option for the Musketeers this season?
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I would say Zach Fremantle and Ryan Conwell right there, 1A, 1B for best player on the team. I think Ryan is still adjusting a little bit to this level. I mean, we saw what he did at Indiana State last year. He's one of the most coveted guards in the portal in this offseason. Xavier's able to get him. I do think that there has been a little bit of an adjustment period, especially in the last few games for Ryan, where maybe he's felt the pressure of having to perform and having to carry the offensive load from the perimeter.
Yeah.
But all of that is to say that Ryan has been a fantastic player this year. He's been exactly what Xavier has needed for big stretches of the season. And he's going to be somebody that Xavier's really going to need on Saturday afternoon at 2 o'clock.
Yeah. Trey Green, there was a lot of rumors swirling on X.com. I don't know how much you're allowed to say, but he will not be available due to a health-related issue for the next – and I guess I'll say the foreseeable future he won't be available. How much of a loss is this for the Musketeers?
He wasn't playing that many minutes, and there is a world where this does kind of in a backwards way benefit Xavier from the perimeter aspect of Dante Maddox, because Dante was constantly looking over his shoulder and having to worry, and basically competing, I would say, with Trey Green for minutes. And obviously Trey Green going down is somebody that, you could count on him at different points for an offensive burst, come in, hit a few threes, kind of be that microwave shooter, one of the best free throw shooters I've ever seen. I won't say one of the best. I mean, he's only missed one free throw in his 2 years at Xavier. He's like a 96% free throw shooter.
That's insanity.
He's incredible. I mean, he's incredible from the free throw line. But Maddox, I think, is the key to the perimeter of this team, which is weird to say given the very few minutes that Dante has played. But he is somebody that now in the last couple of games has looked a lot better. He's embraced his role. He's not turned the ball over as much. He's not taking those crazy threes as much. And if he can lean more into that role now that he realizes he has to play it because he doesn't have Trey Green competing for those minutes here for the foreseeable future, then in a kind of weird backwards way, it could end up working out as a benefit for Xavier in like a glass half full sense, where obviously you don't want to lose a player for an extended period, but if you have to find a positive, I would say that is one to look at.
You mentioned Xavier's been dropping in you always like the KenPom and the net and all those nonsensical rankings. They have been dropping a little bit.
Sure.
Those are not KenPom's nonsense, and once we all come to grips with that,
you out on the big KP?
Yeah, no, nonsense, absolute nonsense.
Not your guy.
No, okay. But it was a solid start for Xavier, 8-2. I mean, the two losses, you could have looked at those two losses coming to the year, those two games, coming to the year and say those would probably be the two losses in our first 10 games. Coach Miller, at least what I've seen and heard at these press conferences, I would say he expects a little bit more out of the Musketeers. But is this about where your expectations were, or maybe a little lower, a little better? Where are you at as a whole right now for Xavier?
I would definitely say lower. I definitely thought this team would beat TCU. I don't think TCU is a very good basketball team, and that's a disappointing loss. I don't think anybody saw them getting run off the floor by 25 against Michigan. Now, that final score isn't totally indicative of what happened in that game. They were down by 8 with like 7 or 8 minutes left and then just totally fell flat in the last 2 wars of the game. So that's a little different. But all of that is to say, Xavier's offense has not been this year what we all thought it was going to be in the offseason, what we saw against Dayton in the exhibition, what we heard about when they played Notre Dame in a secret scrimmage where they're putting up, around 100 points in both of them. And that's just not what we've seen so far. Now they're coming off literally their best offensive performance in the history of that building at Cintas Center. But it's against one of the worst teams they've ever played. I would say, though, Elliot, all of that
means they're
going into Saturday. You feel better going into Saturday. I got asked last night about what's the feeling going into this crosstown shootout. And it's a better feeling for Xavier going into it off a game where you scored 119 points and shot 67% from 3. I don't care who it's against. You could have played an AAU team. You could have played a high school team. And just to get that confidence back, than if you're going into this game off a road loss against a Big 12 team. And that's where Xavier playing that tune-up game where I know it's finals week for UC, but generally UC doesn't play a game in that week leading up to the shootout. They generally take the week off and try to prepare for the game. Xavier always, except for 2 years ago, plays a game in the middle of the week to get ready for the shootout. That's just how Xavier handles this game. That's what they did this year, and they beat Morgan State by 61. You feel a little bit better after just literally just seeing the ball go in the hoop. Sometimes you just got to see one go through.
Who do you think is a better roster this year? Cheatham Middle School out in Tennessee or Morgan State, wherever the hell they played yesterday, 2 days ago?
That's a great question, Elliot. Cheatham Musketeers does have a nice ring to it. You want some merch?
We'll see. I think they took a red approach though. They stuck with the
I know. I saw that. It was a little jarring.
Let's get to the game. I don't really even want to talk about the game, but I have to talk about the game. Xavier's won its last 5 meetings.
Isn't that why I'm here?
Yeah, that's why you're here. They've won the last 5 meetings. Xavier has.
Why don't you want to talk about this game? Cincinnati is like 16th in the Ken Pom. They're like first in the net.
Well, I wrote out these questions.
Hey, go ahead.
I just like to read it. Do you care if I read it, Paul?
No, please read.
Xavier's won the last 5 meetings. Xavier hasn't lost at Cintas in seemingly over a decade, 10-0 in their last 10 at Cintas. I'm going to say it so you don't have to. I think UC does have the better roster this year. However, I don't care if LeBron is on this team. This is never an easy win for the Bearcats. It's never been an easy win. Is this year going to be close, or will we see the Cats maybe have an easy victory? Let's see the Xavier guys say the Bearcats are going to have an easy victory this year.
I will not say that the Bearcats are going to have an easy victory this year, but what I will say is when you talk about this game and how close this game has been over the years at some points, Xavier has won the last 13 shootouts dating back to the 1980s that have been decided by 6 points or less. When it comes down to it, as our old friend Tom would say, when it's nut-cutting time, Xavier has been the team that has made the winning plays down the stretch. Remember 2 years ago at Fifth Third Arena, the game was tied. Xavier was up by 19? Cincinnati rallies all the way back. David DeJulius hits a banked-in 3 and 1, ties the game.
Yep.
Sule Boom goes down, gets fouled, hits 2 free throws. Wes Miller calls a timeout. Sule Boom then hits 2 more free throws, or 1 more free, whatever it was, game's over. My point with this is Cincinnati has won games by wide margins in the crosstown shootout historically over the last 30 years or so. And you remember the last time they won back in 2018, it was like a 17-point game. Xavier never really had a chance in that game. Their offense looked flat. They didn't even score 50 points. If you're UC in this game, because I think all of the pressure in this game is on Cincinnati. I think all of the pressure in this game is on Cincinnati and specifically on Wes Miller. Because with the transfer portal and everything else, the players understand how big of a game this is, but you never truly understand how big of a game this is until you walk onto that court for the first time, especially as an opposing player. But all of the pressure in this game is on Wes Miller, who sat down in his introductory press conference and said they were going to beat Xavier, and now he's 0-3. He has to win a game like this eventually. He has to do it. And if you look at what Cincinnati has done so far in this non-conference schedule, they have a win against Georgia Tech, and they have done what they needed to do, like I talked about with Xavier, Xavier didn't beat the teams that they should have beaten by a million. Cincinnati did, and that's why they've been a metrics darling this year. That is to their credit. They have done exactly what they needed to do as defined by the selection committee over the last couple of years. But what they don't have, yet again, is that signature non-conference win going into their Big 12 conference slate.
Yeah.
You have two opportunities to do this against two local teams. You have Xavier, you have a week, and then you have Dayton. You have to win one of those games, if not both of those games, if you are Wes Miller. Otherwise, it's going to turn into you can recruit, but can you win in the non-conference? This game is at home. This game is at Fifth Third Arena. The metrics favor Cincinnati. They're probably going to be a 9-point favorite.
Whoa.
But in this game,
whoa, no way. 9-point favorite? You think 9?
Ken Palm has it at 10. I mean, they're always
No
within
way.
a point.
Oh, my God.
What do you think it is?
My number was 6. 5.5, 6 is what I thought it would be. But if it's – I'll eat crow if I'm wrong on this. 10 points for that big of a rivalry game, a game where UC is – I mean, I'm looking at the history here, and it's ugly. There's no way 10 points.
Hey, Paul, hope you're well. If it's 10 points, I'm going to put a lot on Xavier.
Hey, Jacob,
I think UC – again, last year I said it. Last year, if there was ever a year where UC was going to win this game in Cintas, it would have been last season. They didn't. They failed utterly. This year, again, it's the same type of situation. I'm scared of Fremantle, but UC certainly has the edge if you look at roster to roster. If they don't win it this year, I fear we'll never win it. But 10 points, I don't even know. I'm going to bet on the game. I don't know if I could responsibly wager on UC minus 9.5. I don't think I could do it. That's way too many points.
It might not be 9.5, but I do think it'll be somewhere in the like 8, 8.5, 9 range. I mean, Ken Palm's never that far off. Maybe they factor in a rivalry. I mean, but again, it's computers, it's analytics. They go by the numbers. Like, are they really going to factor in the rivalry aspect of it?
Yeah.
You know, Rick and I talked about it last night. He thought it'd be closer to like 7. But I mean, if you look at any metric that projects the line for this game, it's no less than 7. If you even want to get down that low, I think it'll be closer to like 8.5, 9. Either way, I mean, that's what you're talking about, which I do think is an inflated number, and especially when you get down to the fact that UC is the 4th worst free throw shooting team in the country, which is mind-boggling to believe. I just don't understand. I don't get it, Elliot. And I know it bugs you.
It's truly, and it's out of all my fandoms, it's the one constant that's remained I'm 25 years old. For 25 years, they have been so bad at free throws, and Dylan Mitchell's phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. Coming into their last game, he was 1 for 15 at the foul line. 1 for 15. That number is so preposterous that you can't even talk about it. You can't, because it's not a real number. 1 for 15. Yeah. He's been improving. He talked about it in the press conference after the last game. But I'll say this: it's probably going to come down to free throws. And if UC doesn't have it, I'm very, very concerned that they're going to lose yet again. And also, it's a first half. Xavier's dominated the first half of each of these last 5 games, and I expect a similar sort of output. They need the Bearcats to be ready to go. The Bearcats need to be ready to go right off the rip. You talked about Wes Miller, how much it means to him. You work very closely with Sean Miller. How does Coach Miller view this game? Is this the biggest game on the schedule for Xavier?
I mean, I don't think there's any doubt about the fact that this game means a lot to this city, and whether it doesn't matter what side of the rivalry you're on. If you're on Cincinnati's side, who have lost 5 straight, you're kidding yourself if you say that you don't care about this game, because it is the biggest game on both teams' schedules for the entire season. There is no doubt about it, because when it comes down to it, all you do is you hear about this game for an entire year. You hear about last year's game and the fact that Cincinnati was favored at Cintas with the roster they had and still couldn't beat a Xavier team that finished 16-18. You're kidding yourself if you say that this game is not the biggest game on both teams' schedules. Now, here's what I will say about Cincinnati. If they don't win this game against Xavier, they have opportunities to make it up in the Big 12. This is not a season-killing loss for Cincinnati, because you play Dayton, who is very good this year, has a game against Marquette this weekend, and then obviously you go and you play in the Big 12, where you're going to have a million opportunities to pick up some signature wins. Xavier needs a win like this season to really solidify the non-conference, where Wake Forest is now sub-100. South Carolina's in the SEC, which is the best conference in the country right now, but they kind of been in flux a little bit. They didn't beat Michigan, didn't beat TCU. For a win and for the resume, this game means a lot more to Xavier than it does to Cincinnati. It just take out the rivalry aspect of it. I'm purely like Selection Sunday. What does this game mean from a resume standpoint? It would mean more to Xavier to win this game by a wide margin than it would from Cincinnati's perspective. So from a micro perspective of getting into the tournament, what does it mean? It means more. There's more pressure on Xavier this year. From a macro perspective of winning the shootout, ending that narrative, trying to turn the tide and, prove that you can win a game like this if you're Wes Miller, all of the pressure is on Wes Miller. So both teams have a respective amount of pressure there. I think from Xavier's perspective, Sean Miller has obviously had a ton of experience in this game from round 1 now to round 2 that he's been back here 2-0 back here against Cincinnati in his second stint at Xavier. So, he understands what this game is. He understands what it means to this fan base, to the city, to everybody else. They don't take it lightly. They understand how big of a game it is on the schedule, both by metrics and by emotion. There's no doubt. People ask all the time, do the players understand what this means in a game like this where they're all from the transfer portal, they're all mercenaries who just come in and put the jersey on and play? It doesn't matter. These guys know. Dylan Mitchell talked about it in the press conference the other day because him and Quincy Oliveri are friends. Everybody knows. Simas Lukosius has played Xavier a million times dating back to his 2 years at Butler. These guys know what this game means. Ryan Conwell has played Cincinnati 3 times. Beat him in the NIT last year, scored 18 points when he was at Indiana State. He played him twice, didn't play very well, but he played him twice in his first year at South Florida. Zach Freemantle, Jerome Hunter, Davion McKnight, Dalen Swain, all of these guys have played Cincinnati before. So that's where I say schematically, I don't think Xavier is going to be overwhelmed. The question is, can Xavier mitigate the turnovers? Can they mitigate some of the rebounding issues they've had? And can they defend better? I don't think Cincinnati is an exceptional offensive team. I think Connor Hickman is my choice for a breakout candidate for Saturday because he's 0 for his last 8 from 3. He's had a kind of a miserable last 3 games, and he's somebody that if he can hit 2 or 3 threes and get hot, lights the crowd on fire, gets the team energized, maybe kind of gets some more things going offensively for Cincinnati. Can a Dante Maddox, can a Marcus Foster be that guy for Xavier? We'll see.
Do you think where is this game won or lost? Last year, I think Usman. I don't. That's how you pronounce that, right? Is it Usman? I feel like that was Usman. That was one of the better games I feel like he played all year. I think he had a double-double in that game. Aziz has struggled this season offensively. Freemantle versus Aziz. I'm gonna favor Freemantle in that. I like UC's guards versus Xavier's guards. Is it one down low or is it one around the perimeter?
This is a player's game. This is a game where scoring matters. This is a game where shooting matters, especially on the road. Can you go in, hit a couple of threes, quiet the crowd, and play without nerves? Where Xavier, I think, has a significant edge, and this is crazy to say because of Cincinnati's height. I think Arrington Page is a big body. I think Aziz has, the physical frame, but I haven't necessarily been impressed with Cincinnati's physicality this year.
Yeah.
And Zach Freemantle being 5-0, I know he hasn't played in 5, but being 5-0 as part of the team in this game and understanding what it would mean for him to go 6-0, he is going to play, I'm sure, with a ton of physicality around the rim. He's going to want to set the tone down there. And if Xavier can rebound, if they can be difference makers around the rim and score and be effective in the post, that could be the difference in this game because, between Jizzle, Dan Skillings, all the rest, I think from Cincinnati's side, how healthy Dan Skillings is going to be a difference maker because he played 14 minutes. He's played 14 minutes the other day, but he came off the bench. He had some energy, deflections, was pretty good defensively, but didn't look like Dan Skillings, right? When Dan Skillings is at his best, he is the best player on Cincinnati. He's the biggest difference maker on that team, whether he's starting or playing starters minutes off the bench. Dan Skillings is the straw that stirs the drink on Cincinnati. He didn't look like himself the other day, and then he didn't practice. Is he back to 100% for Saturday?
I don't know if you'll be 100%, but as long as we can get a little bit better each day heading up to Saturday, I do think Dan Skillings will be one of the bigger X factors in that game.
Oh yeah,
because if he puts up the Tony Snell meme where 0-0-0-0 in 36 minutes, we're in big trouble. There's no doubt. We need his rebounding desperately. So I'm hoping Dan Skillings will be at least somewhat. I'm going to say 90. Give me 90%, Dan, and I'll be happy. Final couple questions here. Final score prediction. Number 1.
So here's what I would say. I'll give you the final score. I'll say 75-71 Xavier. And the reason I'm saying that is because for everything that we have talked about, Cincinnati maybe having the better team on paper, maybe the momentum, playing this game at home, quite literally the reason that I have picked Xavier this week, outside of, obviously being around and being a Xavier guy. I mean, there's no denying it. Everybody that's watching this knows that. It's hard for me to pick against Xavier until Cincinnati proves that they can win this game. That is where I fall. I mean,
It's fair.
I can't pick Cincinnati to win this game until they prove that they can win it. Because last year you would have said Cincinnati. I know it was on the road. I know Cincinnati hasn't won at Cintas in a while. But Cincinnati should have won last year's game by 5 to 10 points.
Yeah.
And they didn't. They couldn't make the winning plays. Can they do that at home with this roster? I can't pick them until I see it. So I'm not going to pick them this year.
I think if you see, and again, if Jizzle James is able to do what he did the last couple games here, if he's able to shine, I do think UC is going to win this game. I think UC is going to win this game probably 80-75. It's going to be a close game. Like that 10-point number, that's preposterous. UC's not winning this game by 12, 15. It won't be a blowout. That's just not how this game goes. I do predict UC to win, but I'm a UC fan, so who knows. A couple silly questions here. I hear your voice leading into Cintas Center. You sound a little dry on that. Can you maybe retape that?
No, I can't retape it because I want to make one thing clear. I want you to know that your safety is my first concern.
Okay, that's right. Well, I was like, I had a bag with me. What's my bag size? Oh, Paul, over the magic intercom leading into the stadium. Oh, you can't have a big bag in there. So I'm like, okay, I'll put the bag back into the car. So thank you very much for that, Paul. That was beautiful. Final question here. We have episode 3 of the doc, as I mentioned, now live on YouTube. Will we be filming any of this leading up to Saturday, maybe the aftermath of Saturday? Will this be aired on the next Sean Miller doc?
Yeah, I mean, everything that is going on in this season is being covered. So, obviously what happens on Saturday is going to dictate a lot of what happens in the show. But, I mean, win or lose, you're not shying away from telling the story of the season. So, yes, we are very much covering this game just as we cover every single game. And, we'll see what happens on Saturday. And we're excited to tell the story of the rest of the season no matter what.
Well, Paul, I'm very happy that you came on today. I took up more of your time than I should have. So
it's all good, brother.
Thank you very much,
Does
Paul.
Does Jacob have any questions? He's been quiet.
I asked I said, Jacob, do you have any questions?
Have to be basketball.
No, see, Paulie, the UC guys get real mad at me when I try to talk about any UC sport. They don't let me talk about UC. So I let Elliot handle it this week. It's a big week for the Bearcats and the Musketeers. I'm going to be respectful and take a step back.
Jacob dons the home team's jersey every year.
I do.
Will you be donning the Bearcats?
No. The way this season has gone so far for me, I'm a die-hard Xavier fan for this matchup, and that's thanks to our friend Ed and the Chatterbox Bearcats guys.
This is why Ed doesn't like you.
Yeah,
this is why. This trolling that you do, this yapping you do over there,
the
is why nobody likes you.
Paul, I don't know if you saw the clip I said after Ohio State lost to Michigan that Ohio State should opt out of the playoff because that game means...
Yeah, it's a nonsense.
Oh, I saw it.
Yeah.
The
Chatterbox Bearcats guys asked last night, if they lose to Xavier, should UC opt out of the tournament? I think they must have forgotten that UC doesn't make the tournament. So that's something they won't have to worry about.
Ooh,
I just wanted to get that out there while we're here.
It's a preemptive strike.
Yeah. You can't not have me in your field of 64 because I'm not good enough. I'm not going to go.
All right, this is why Jacob shouldn't have been on. Paul, thank you very much. Get back to it. We love you, and if you need me, Paul, this is my phone. You just give me a little text anytime you want, all right? So you just give me a text.
Are you going to be there Saturday? Are you going to be there?
I'm debating buying tickets because my couple of my buddies are going and they're talking me into buying outrageous price tickets. So I don't like going to this game because it never goes.
The standing room at Fifth Third is fine. It's fine. It's fine there.
It's fine, but I don't want to go there for another loss. I can't. My heart can't bear it, Paul. I can't take it. I might want to just watch it from home. And if Xavier's up by 10 at the half, I turn it off and I go sit in my bed and cry. So that's what I'll do. But
I think I'm gonna go.
Okay, Jacob's going. Maybe I'll go there. Maybe I'll go with Jacob. Paul,
I'll see you there.
We'll see you there. Paul, thank you very much, buddy. Have a good one.
You got it.
Happy
See you
hump day.
guys. See you, Casey.
See ya.